morning students. So in the previous class we have solved 5 problems on northwest corner rule. So as 5 problems we have solved, I think it is enough. Fine. If the time available, we will solve some more problems, but we have to proceed on to the next topic in the syllabus, that is least cost or matrix minima method. Fine. So let me write the name, that is least cost or matrix minima method. So this method is also a method where we find initial basic feasible solution for the transportation problem. Once again I repeat, we will find initial basic feasible solution for the transportation problem using least cost or matrix minima method, as good as northwest corner rule. In northwest corner rule also we have find the initial basic feasible solution for the given transportation problem. Fine. So every method has its own algorithm. So algorithm means what? An algorithm which tell you how to solve the problem. What all the cases can come while solving the problem. So we have a blueprint. So algorithm is nothing but a blueprint how to solve the what? Problems. Fine. So here in this least cost or matrix minima method, the following are the steps or algorithms to solve the problem. So step number 1 here, so in step number 1, determine the smallest cost. Determine the smallest cost in the cost matrix of the transportation table. Let it be Cij. What? We have to determine what? Smallest cost in the cost matrix of the transportation table. So let it be what? Cij. So Cij is the smallest cost in the cost matrix of the transportation table. Allocate Xij is equal to minimum of Ai, Bj in the cell I, j. So we need to allocate the Xij values, that is supply or demand. We have to find the minimum of supply comma demand, whichever the minimum. If the supply is minimum, we allocate it. If the demand is minimum, we allocate it in the cell I comma j. In that particular cell, if I consider a particular cell here, for that respective supply and for that respective demand, I mean to say the supply will come in respective column and the demand will come, the supply will come in respective row and the supply will come in respective column. So in that respective column and in that respective row, that is I row and j column, we have to find the minimum of supply or demand. Whichever the minimum, we have to allocate. Fine. So this is step 1. Whereas in step 2, if Xij is equal to Ai, so these are the conditions. Xij is equal to Ai means what? The minimum is Ai. Cross off ith row of the transportation table and decrease Bj by Ai, then go to step 3. What have I said? If Ai is the minimum, so cross of the ith row of the transportation, that particular row which is minimum, so we have to cross off, means we have to strike it off. Then decrease Bj by Ai and go to step 3. Fine. Whereas next, if Xij is equal to Bj, so one thing we have to remember here, Ai is corresponds to column, whereas Ai is corresponds to row, whereas Bj is corresponds to column. So if minimum is Ai, that is row, strike off that row, cross off that row in the transportation table and decrease Bj by Ai and go to step 3. Whereas if Xij is Bj, cross off jth column of the transportation table and decrease what? Ai, decrease Ai by Bj, then go to step 3. Fine? Go to step 3. So let me finish with step 3. Sorry, the third condition, that is Xij is equal to Ai is equal to Bj. In this condition, what happens? Cross off either ith row or jth column of the transportation table, then go to step 3. Fine. So let me repeat step number 1 and 2. Fine. So what happens in step number 1 here? First, determine the smallest cost in the cost matrix of the transportation table. If I supposed to say it in Kannada, ಕೊಟ್ಟಂತ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ಸ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅತಿ ಸಣ್ಣದಾದಂತ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಹುಡುಕಬೇಕು. ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಫೈಂಡ್ ದಿ ಸ್ಮಾಲೆಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ಸ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ of the transportation table. I mean to say cost matrix of the transportation table. So once we find out that smallest value or smallest cost, allocate, that is xij is equal to minimum of ai comma bj in the cell ij. In step number 2, xij is equal to ai, cross off ith row of the transportation table and decrease bj by ai if the smallest is a row. Then cross off that row and decrease bj by ai. Go to step 3. If smallest is the column, then cross off that column and decrease ai by bj. Go to step 3. If both column and row are the smallest, that is supply and demand in that particular row and column is same, either cross off that row or column, that is purely depend upon the one who is solving the problem. Fine. So I go for crossing of column, somebody go for crossing of a row, depends upon that individual person, provided supply and demand for that particular row and column is same in this case. Then go to step 3. Fine. So the last step will be explained in the next session. Thank you.